What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video here on Review and Preview Sports, and I'm joined by a frequent returning guest, Vinny Milani from the Sack City Podacst. Vinny, you underwent the little brand name change there, but welcome back to the show. How's it going?
I appreciate you having me on, man. I'm excited for this thing to get underway to talk some Jags football. And yeah, the brand change was a little. I was a little emotional going through it. It was my baby for the Rough Cut Sportscast was my baby for about a year, and then we decided to rip the Band-Aid off and move towards the Sack City Podcast, and it's been going great ever since.
I love the name, by the way, Sack City, referring to, I'm assuming, Saxonville, back from, uh,
That's
right?
what, yeah, that's kind of what it stemmed from. Although my co-hosts will say that they're not Jags fans, and will say that that is not where it came from. But I did get some inspiration from Saxonville, and I was like, where the Sac City works, and so we have this whole like community now, and it's like, it's the city, so it's pretty cool.
And I do have a soft spot for Jacksonville, being that my little brother goes to school down there. But
There you
um,
go.
let's talk about Jacksonville and their free agency so far. The Jaguars have spent the bank over the past 2 days in free agency. And the first signing I want to talk to you about is the big one. Christian Kirk signed to a 4-year, $84 million deal. Now, on the surface, Vinny, this doesn't look like such a great deal, but I want to get your reaction. And can you go over some of the details into this deal that some people may not know about?
Yeah, so on the surface, it looks like a typical Jaguars move. They overpay for a player and then he's not going to be able to pan out. And we'll see what Christian Kirk can do. But when you dive deep into the numbers, and I'm no cap expert, but Christian Kirk is getting a $1.5 million deal this year. And then next year it turns into $15.5 million towards the cap. And then the following year, they have the ability to cut him with no dead money at all, and it's a way for the Jaguars to be able to kind of test him out. If he works out, it's great. If he doesn't, you're tied to that 15.5 million, and then you can move on from him and go from there. But the way that Trent Baalke, who has gotten a lot of heat over the past few months with the Jaguars, them bringing him back, he kind of worked out some magic in this contract for Christian Kirk to say, okay, on the surface, it's a pretty big deal. He's a top 10 paid wide receiver on average. But if you'll dive deep into it, it's not that bad. And for Jags fans, I'd be pretty happy about this because you get to see the potential, and hopefully he can reach that potential in a Jaguars uniform.
I think the argument some people are making is instead of signing Kirk for 21 million a year, which isn't really what it is if you look past the original headline of the contract, which majority of NFL fans sadly won't do. Um,
Yeah.
a lot of people are saying you could have drafted a receiver in the second round equal to Kirk's talent and pay him 1 million a year for 4 years. There is that avenue as well. Um, I'm not so sure. I mean, I'm kind of, I guess you would say, the middleman here with this deal. I don't love it, but I don't hate it either. He was a productive receiver in Arizona. His 5 touchdowns last season, had almost 1,000 yards, and he had 6 touchdowns the year before in 2020. So he is a guy who, yes, he's now technically speaking the third highest paid receiver in football, but he was a guy who, was relied upon with Kyler Murray last year. No DeAndre Hopkins in the lineup, and he was a big, dangerous weapon for them down the stretch.
Yeah, and I mean to the point about how the Jaguars could have possibly drafted a wide receiver for less money in the second round. If you think about it, that could be said, and this is what I love with like NFL fans and fans in general. Like it's always one side or the other. Like the thing is, if you think about it, the Jacksonville Jaguars could have went out and signed a safety or a cornerback and paid him a bunch of money, and you could have said they could have drafted a safety for less money in the second round as well. So it really goes hand in hand, and it's the part where it's the Jaguars committing to what really plagued them all last season. I mean, Trevor Lawrence was throwing to special teams guys at one point of his season. He was throwing to his number one target of Jamal Agnew, and Marvin Jones was all right, but he was been a number two most of his career, and Laviska Shenault didn't pan out the way I especially hoped. But it's one of those things that the money's going to go somewhere. I'm glad the Jaguars are recognizing that that was a big flaw last season, and they're trying to reconcile that.
Absolutely. Now, Kirk did have 103 targets last year, 228 yards after the catch, and he did have 6 drops, which is somewhat of a concern, but Christian Kirk was relatively a decent receiver for the Cardinals. Now, they doubled down, getting Zay Jones as well, who, fun fact, has the same agent as Christian Kirk. So, with the Laviska Shenault trade rumors going around and DJ Chark signing with the Lions, what do you think of this deal for Zay Jones? Do you think that obviously it seems that Jacksonville is trying to build around Trevor Lawrence?
Yeah, that's the biggest thing is they're committing to this now. Zay Jones has been a guy that I really wasn't when I saw that deal pop up. It's like they gave him that. I mean, it's not a big contract. It's nothing like it's nothing crazy, but it is a good amount of money going towards a guy who has never really been the guy on an offense. And I'm the potential is there for Zay Jones. What I looked at this when I saw this move pop up, and I kind of looked at it like looked at the whole picture of the Jaguars move signing Christian Kirk and signing Zay Jones. I was like, man, I wonder if fans would have rathered them put all of their money towards a guy like Allen Robinson, who would have fans would have loved for him to come back to Jacksonville, or would they have rather the quantity over the quality? And who knows if Allen Robinson can be the quality anymore? But I think the Jaguars, like I said before, when we're talking about them bringing in Christian Kirk, it's them committing to their biggest weakness last season and saying, okay, let's go out and get as many guys as we possibly can. And with Laviska Shenault, it breaks my heart to see the trade rumors pop up, but I think it would be a big mistake if the Jaguars traded him, and I hope to see him on the roster next year.
I agree. I'm a big Chenault guy. I like him a lot. Now, the elephant in the room we have to address. You see my sweater, I see your hat. Evan Engram, the now former New York Giant, is heading down south, down 95 to Jacksonville after 5 seasons with Big Blue. Was the only really consistent available target for Daniel Jones last season, or whoever was playing at quarterback, had 3 touchdowns, which led New York. Embarrassing. 1 year, $9 million deal. Engram has a history of drops, started his career with a lot of injuries. What do you make of this contract, and how can Press Taylor help him?
I like the fact that it's 1 year. Now the money again with the Jaguars had one of the highest cap space in the NFL this season. So like when you're talking about money with the Jaguars, it's completely okay. Like especially for guys that are now on 1 year deals, okay, we can move on from him next year, and it really won't matter. And it's perfect for a guy like Evan Engram, who obviously has a lot of injury concerns, and then the drops come into play. My biggest thing with Evan Engram, and I did this for my show. We released a top 5 tight ends video on our TikTok page, and I was in charge of it. And I put Evan Engram at 5, and this is when Mike Gesicki was still out there. This is when Zach Ertz. This is when everything was really getting started. Dalton Schultz, and I'm thinking to myself, the talent with Evan Engram, and this is what I'm sure Giants fans have been saying all along. The talent is there for Evan Engram. It's just he has to put it together. And the fact that the Jaguars only gave him a 1 year deal allows them to say, okay, maybe we can put it all together for Evan Engram, and then we can go from there. And realistically, this is good. The Jaguars struggled at the wide receiver position and have struggled at the tight end position for a very, very long time. And if Evan Engram can hit his true potential, he will be the best tight end the Jaguars have had since a very, very long time. A very long time. And I'm really hopeful for that. But also, there's one thing. I don't know what your thought. I'd love to get your thoughts on this and pick your brain. A lot of rumors came out saying that teams were not only interested in Evan Engram to offer him a contract to be a tight end, but there was interest in him playing as like a slot receiver. Now, this league is, we're seeing players take up 2 positions and be dynamic at it. We see Deebo Samuel do it. We see Cordell Patterson do it. Who's to say Evan Engram, if he stays healthy and kind of eliminates those drops, can't be that next dynamic player who's taken up 2 positions and playing great for the Jacksonville Jaguars?
Yeah, and I don't necessarily disagree with that point at all, because the Giants have used Evan Engrams in multiple ways over the course of the past 5 seasons. Again, Engram is not a good run blocker at all. It did improve last season, and he is more of a guy who is a big play threat, right? I mean, with the Giants' incompetent offense, they used him in ways that really shook my head. But I do agree with that. I don't think he's a natural tight end. His height wise, he's built like one, but he looks more like a receiver when he's on the football field, which is why, the Giants, I think they signed Kyle Rudolph last season. They tried developing Caden Smith. And now with Engram heading to Jacksonville, that is a real possibility, Vinny. I think you have a really good talent there, but be prepared to get frustrated with him. Everything with him that is really made a lot of Giant fans angry is the mental aspect. Great guy, wants to win, very athletically gifted. The mental aspect, there's something that just isn't clicking with him that's keeping him from being a top 5 to 7 tight end in this league. Will he ever reach that potential? Quite frankly, I don't think so, but the potential is there. So that's where I stand with that.
One thing with that, though, is who have been the coaches for Evan Engram through his career? Joe Judge. Who else? Who did you have before that?
Pat Shurmur.
Pat Shurmur. Who was the other guy that
and Ben McAdoo, the guy we don't name.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. So, I mean, the 3 coaches that he's had in his entire career has been, I would say, not the best. And now he's going to a team now with Doug Peterson, who has a lot of respect and a lot of leadership qualities. That obviously took the Philadelphia Eagles to the Super Bowl and won it with them with a interesting cast on offense. I mean, I have a little bit more faith in that, and maybe I'm a blind Jaguars fan and super excited to have an athletic tight end for once. And you brought up the blocking. The Jacksonville Jaguars under the Urban Meyer era, one of their big signings was Chris Manhertz, one of the best blocking tight ends in the NFL, who used to play for the Carolina Panthers. We didn't see him much all last season, but maybe that can balance itself out. Again, maybe I'm just a hopeful Jaguars fan and I'm tired of seeing my team losing and just hoping for the best once again.
Speaking of blocking, Jaguars grabbed the best guard on the market, arguably the best offensive lineman in Brandon Scherft. 3 years, $49.5 million, 5-time Pro Bowler. Obviously, Andrew Norwell and AJ Cann are both not returning to the team, more than likely. How excited are you about Brandon Scherft protecting Trevor Lawrence? Because obviously the right side of the line was a huge concern with Jawan Taylor, but now you have Scherft there next to him. It doesn't look as bad.
Yeah, I'm so excited. When I saw this move pop up, I was like, oh my God, we got one of the best offensive linemen in this free agent class. And now this does 2 things for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Not only does it give the Jaguars a chance to have one of the best guards in the NFL. Hey, look at this. And we'll talk about Brandon Scherft here. They signed Andrew Norwell to a 5-year massive contract when he was leaving Carolina, and Jaguars fans saw that and they were excited because the potential was there. They never really lived up to that money. Andrew Norwell, again, this goes out to Trent Baalke, who got a lot of heat. And Brandon Scherft is only on a 3-year deal here. So if he doesn't pan out, they can get out of it fairly quickly. But he is a guy that can be an anchor on any offensive line, and he could do that for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And the other thing that this does here is they tagged Cam Robinson. They have Brandon Scherft now. You can almost eliminate them going after an Evan Neal or maybe another offensive lineman with the first overall pick. So this not only is saying, okay, we're going in on Brandon Scherft. This also might be a telling sign that Aiden Hutchinson is going to be a Jacksonville Jaguar or some other player at first overall.
You have a very intelligent mind, Vinny, because that was my next question. Where does Jacksonville go at number 1? Do they still look at Evan Neal or Ike Mekwonu out of NC State at number 1 overall? Or, like you just said, Aiden Hutchinson, is that the preferred pick there?
So I think on this, like when you look at the Jacksonville Jaguars organization and you probably look at the most popular pick, it's probably Aiden Hutchinson. But I've never really been a fan of Jawan Taylor. I did think they got good value when they drafted him in the 2nd round. He was projected a first-round pick. They got good value out of him, but he's been the most penalized offensive lineman in the NFL the past few years. And I just haven't seen enough of him to say, okay, I'm sold on Jawan Taylor being on the right side or left side. And you also franchise tagged Cam Robinson. But because of all of that, and you have Jawan Taylor, you're still invested in him a little bit, and now you franchise tag Cam Robinson. I think that gives the Jaguars a little bit of flexibility to say, okay, maybe we don't need to draft an offensive lineman in the first round or with the first overall pick, and it allows us to be a little bit flexible and go after a dominant pass rusher in Aiden Hutchinson, a potentially dominant pass rusher in Aiden Hutchinson to line him up across from Josh Allen, which would be fantastic for the Jacksonville Jaguars defensive line. I'd be excited to see Hutchinson in the 904.
And Hutchinson is a great name to bring up moving over to the defensive side of the ball, because you already stocked up on a new linebacker in Oluokun, joining this Jaguars defense on a 3-year, $45 million deal. This comes after releasing Myles Jack, who was a young, promising linebacker. Oluokun led the league with 192 tackles last season, had 2 sacks, 3 picks, and a forced fumble starting every game for an awful Atlanta Falcons defense. What are your thoughts on this signing, getting the league's leading tackler to the 904?
So I might get boring here because I'm going to keep bringing up the same old thing that this Jacksonville Jaguars team has really noticed what was wrong with this team in the past few years. Tackling was a major factor for this team. I can't tell you how many Jaguars games I got frustrated at. You talk about Evan Engram making you frustrated. The Jaguars defense made me so frustrated last year because of poor tackling, and just it looked almost at times that the team was being lazy. And I'm sad to see Myles Jack go. And the funny thing is, they made this signing before releasing Myles Jack. So the intentions were there for them saying, okay, we might move on from Myles Jack. And they pulled the trigger this morning. And they're saying, okay, let's go for they continue to go for quality here on defense and say, okay, we're getting the guy who led the league in tackles. You know, he's going to be a guy who's going to be able to jump up there and stand tall to guys. I mean, this is the same division. You're going to see Derrick Henry 2 times a year. You're going to see Jonathan Taylor 2 times a year. You are going to need to tackle. This is not like what you're going to see in like the AFC West, where you have stud quarterback after stud quarterback, and you need to either pass rush or get guys on the corner. You got Jonathan Taylor 2 times a year. You've got Derrick Henry 2 times a year. You need guys that can go up and make tackles and make plays. And that's what the Jacksonville Jaguars address with this move here.
Absolutely. I think it's a very interesting signing. I like it for you guys a lot. Vinny, is there anything you want to add here on these Jaguars? I expect a leap in the win total next season for sure.
Yeah, I sure hope so, man. I sure hope so. Yeah. With the Jags, it's a bright future for the Jacksonville Jaguars. There was a lot of skepticism with Urban Meyer last year. I mean, this time last year, we were talking about Urban Meyer saying that he's having a hard time recruiting free agents to come to Jacksonville. This year, we're seeing Trent Baalke work his magic with contracts. We're seeing Doug Peterson. I feel like the Doug Peterson effect is already taking place. Like I said, everyone is noticing the flaws that have been dragging this team down for so many years, whether it be tackling or lack of weapons for the quarterback. They've addressed it. They've made things happen. I don't think they're done yet. I think they're still going to go out there and sign. Maybe it's not a big name like a Teron Armstead or maybe like a Tyrann Mathieu or guys like that, but don't be surprised if the Jaguars still are making moves. Maybe a guy like Landon Collins ends up coming to Jacksonville. I think that would be a great move. I'm excited for wherever the Jaguars go from here. Like I said, this time last year, I didn't have as much trust in what the Jaguars were doing in terms of the front office and the coaching staff. I have a lot more faith in Doug Peterson and Trent Baalke this year.
Vinny, thank you so much for joining me. Definitely excellent insight on this Jaguars team, and I look forward to seeing what other moves the Jaguars may come the NFL draft, holding that coveted number 1 overall pick. So we'll have to talk to you again about that very soon. But Vinny, before I let you go here, where can the people find the Sack City Podcast?
Yeah, so we made it easy here. Our last show, the show that we were once called the Rough Cut Sportscast, it was kind of difficult to find us on social media. We've made it very simple for you guys here. We're at Sack City Pod on all social media platforms, whether it be Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. We have tried to bump up our TikTok game. You know, the times are changing and TikTok is becoming a big thing. You know, I'm not very hip, but my co-hosts are, and they do a killer job over there. So make sure if you have a TikTok or you're into that kind of thing, head on on over to the Sack City Pod on there. But you can also check us out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday live at 8 p.m. Eastern time on Facebook, YouTube, and our Twitter page. And yeah, I appreciate you having me on.
Awesome. I don't have a TikTok either, so I'll have to look into that, but I'm like you in that regard. But Vinny, thank you so much for your time. And folks, remember, if you want more videos like this, you can follow us at Review and Preview Sports on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and our YouTube channel at Review and Preview Sports for more exclusive videos with special guests like Vinny here in this one, representing the Jacksonville Jaguars. Thank you very much, Vinny, and hope you all have a good day.